Imagine standing before a 20-foot giant weighing 4 tons with claws sharp enough to tear you apart in a single strike. Yet, against all odds, our ancestors, the fragile, small humans, found a way to defeat this monster. How did they do it? For millions of years, the Americas belonged to giants. This was a world of thunderous megafauna, where the sheer size of a creature was its ultimate defense. Among these colossal beasts, one stands out as both formidable and enigmatic: the Giant Ground Sloth. Imagine a beast that dwarfed a modern bull, up to 20 feet long, weighing 4 tons, covered in thick, shaggy hair. Its claws weren't just long, they were bone-shattering hooks used for stripping bark, digging, and, crucially, for defense. This was not the gentle, slow-moving creature we know today. This was Megatherium, the great beast, a colossal living fortress that roamed the plains and forests of the Pleistocene. The backdrop to our story is the Late Ice Age, a time of intermittent glaciers and vast, unforgiving landscapes. The giant ground sloth had thrived here for millennia. Its hide was its armor, sometimes reinforced with tiny bones embedded in the skin, turning it into a prehistoric form of chainmail. It was an herbivore, slow to anger, but an unstoppable force when provoked. A mere glance from its height would have sent shivers down the spine of any smaller predator. For a long time, the sloth had few natural enemies, but then a new force arrived: man. These early humans, our ancestors, were not giants. They were small, nimble, and deceptively fragile. They had no thick hides, no 4-inch claws, no massive bulk. Their strength lay in something invisible, yet infinitely powerful: intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability. They stepped into this new world armed only with fire, stone-tipped spears, and a social structure built on communication and teamwork. For these early colonizers of the Americas, every living thing was a test, and the giant ground sloth was the most challenging test of all. It represented a mountain of calories, a lifeline of protein and hide, but one that demanded a price measured in blood. The initial interactions were likely cautious, based on observation. How does one even begin to hunt a creature that size? A direct charge was suicide. An adult sloth could rear up on its massive hind legs, using its thick tail as a third point of balance, towering over everything around it. From that height, it could strike down with its enormous scythe-like claws, instantly disemboweling an attacker. Our ancestors, however, were masters of the subtle art of the hunt. They studied the sloth's gait, its slow, lumbering pace, its solitary movements, and its defensive routines. The first victory wouldn't be won by muscle, but by mind. The true nature of this ancient struggle is written in the earth itself, specifically in a long-frozen, now uncovered lakebed in White Sands, New Mexico. Here, thousands of years ago, a fascinating record was preserved: the fossilized footprints of hunter and hunted. Imagine a vast, muddy expanse, the perfect canvas for history. We see the enormous comma-shaped tracks of the giant sloth, deep and heavy, moving slowly. And nestled inside those very tracks are the smaller, lighter prints of a human. This wasn't a random meeting. This was a stalk. The human hunter was deliberately placing his feet inside the sloth's enormous steps. Why? Perhaps to mask his own scent, or to maintain a relentless, unnervingly close tail. The prints tell a chilling story of a high-stakes pursuit. As the hunter pressed on, the sloth's tracks suddenly change. They become erratic, weaving and circling. We see what scientists call flailing circles, the telltale sign of a frightened or provoked animal swinging its deadly forelimbs in a defensive frenzy. The sloth, realizing it was being followed, was attempting to fend off an unseen threat, but the hunter persisted. The footprints show that as the giant sloth became distracted, another set of smaller human tracks, sometimes moving on tiptoes, approached from the side. This is the crucial moment, the ambush. While one hunter acted as the distraction, the other crept in for the coup de grace. This evidence is profound. It moved the story from mere scavenging to direct, organized confrontation. The human, so small in comparison, used the beast's sheer size against it, relying on distraction and precision to land a single, killing blow to a vulnerable spot, perhaps a soft underbelly or a critical joint. It was the ultimate demonstration of teamwork prevailing over brute force. So, what were the practical tactics employed by these ancient hunters? The giant sloth was not a speedy target, but it was incredibly durable. The key was to exploit the animal's environment and its psychology. They often drove the sloth onto open ground or into muddy riverbeds and swamps, where its huge bulk became a liability, slowing its already ponderous movements. Once immobilized or simply trapped and exhausted, the coordinated attack would begin. The primary weapons were simple but effective: heavy, thrusting spears, often tipped with meticulously flaked stone, and potentially the throwing of heavy rocks. But the weapon was less important than the target. Hitting the thick armor on the body would be useless. The hunters knew they had to aim for the softer, more vulnerable areas: the eyes, the area behind the ear, or the tendons in the legs to bring the animal down. It required astonishing bravery to get close enough to execute this. A single misstep, a second of hesitation, and the hunter would be crushed or torn apart. The rewards, however, were immense. A single adult sloth could feed an entire band of 30 people for weeks. Every part was utilized: the meat for sustenance, the massive hide for shelter and clothing to survive the harsh Ice Age climate, and the bones for tools. The site of Campo Laborde in Argentina gives us a vivid glimpse into the aftermath. Here, giant ground sloth bones were found alongside stone butchering tools. Clear evidence that humans didn't just find a dead sloth, they killed and processed it. They were actively culling this megafauna, marking a definitive shift in the predator-prey balance of the continent. The hunting of the giant ground sloth was not an isolated event. It was part of a larger, tragic pattern known as the Quaternary extinction event. As the Ice Age drew to a close, a lethal combination of factors converged on the megafauna. Climate change drastically altered the vegetation the sloths relied upon, making their immense appetite unsustainable. The very world they were built for was literally shrinking beneath their feet. But the final, fatal blow likely came from the relentless, strategic pressure of human hunters. The arrival of people coincided almost perfectly with the rapid decline of these magnificent giants. Even if humans only hunted a fraction of the sloth population, they likely targeted the young, the old, or the breeding females, the very individuals vital for the species' survival. The sloth's low reproduction rate meant it couldn't adapt to this new super-efficient predator. Unlike faster breeding species, the giant sloth population, once damaged, had no time to recover. Today, the colossal bones of Megatherium lie in museum halls, their silent testimony a reminder of a lost age. Their story is a powerful lesson in the true nature of power. It wasn't brute strength or size that won the war for survival, but ingenuity and cooperation. The giant ground sloth was the ultimate behemoth, a glorious chapter in Earth's history, but it ultimately could not withstand the focused, collective power of the small, thinking ape. Its extinction marks not just the end of a magnificent species, but the true beginning of the age of human dominance. The war was fought slowly, strategically, and thousands of years ago, the tiny hunter stood victorious over the fallen giant.
The giant ground sloth was built for strength, size, and survival. Yet it wasn't enough. In the end, it was human intelligence, strategy, and unity that brought this giant to its knees. Their bones now lie silent in museums, a reminder that even the mightiest can fall, not to force, but to the power of the human